Welcome to summertime. Well, Mary, it's February. That's right, but this is Mississippi, and it's summertime. It's supposed to go to 80, I think, tomorrow. That's crazy. That's really crazy. Welcome along, by the way. Glad to have you with us this live day here in Mississippi. It's a little bit foggy this morning, but what the heck? You know, that'll burn off, and then the sun will come up and all that kind of stuff. And then I just kind of don't like this thaw because it brings out fire ants and weeds, and then you have to take care of that kind of stuff. Just one note of news for you here, that the trial started yesterday, and I was telling you about this. And you know, we've had both of the mayors from Madison and Gluckstadt on the show to talk about this plot of land between the two of them. It's like 4 miles deep anyway, a couple miles. Anyway, it's a rectangular shape of land, 4 miles altogether. They each want to have it for their town. And so started yesterday with testimony from the Madison side, and they're going to continue today. And then when they're finished testifying on what they want before the Chancery Court in Madison, then Gluckstadt will have their chance to have it. And one of the people who testified yesterday was Mary Hawkins Butler, of course, the mayor of Madison. And, you know, she'd like to continue expanding her town because she doesn't have another place to go. And besides, right near there is not a causeway, but some kind of a roadway anyway that's tied into Madison. And so we'll hear what Gluckstadt has to say in a few days. And the judge could decide either to leave it as it is, and it's got some stuff on there by whoever owns it, some sort of development. It's not just blank land. There is some sort of development there, but he could decide to leave it like that, or he could split it between the two cities, or he could give it to one or the other. So it'll be interesting to find out how this is going to go. Don't know when that'll all happen. Sometime before long, though, however, we don't think it's going to be dragged out as much as like Supreme Court or anything like that. Let's see. Let me give you our phone number here. It's 888-808-8637. Our text line is 601-879-4395, and you can watch us at supertalk.fm/Mary because we do live stream. And I've got some people on the show who were going to be here the day that I fell out in November of 2023. Not going to happen again, I certainly do hope. So let me welcome Joe Lee. He is the Dogwood Press publisher and editor-in-chief, and he has a division called Sunrise, and I have an author, one of his authors, Monica Walton, and I know them both, especially Monica. Monica and I shared a crying session in front of the whole bunch of people at our church because she goes to St. Paul's, years ago.
It was a Holy Spirit moment.
Well, it was, but it was an okay thing because, it was a special seminar going on anyway. And I don't think anybody sat around and said, "Oh, look at those people crying." And no, we didn't. It was an okay thing to do. But so welcome to both of you. And Monica, you have now turned into an author. Yeah. This is your second book called Lean Into Lent. This is about Lent. Your first one was about Advent. That's what you were going to do here in 23. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
That's got to be so cool. She has this book
very
called
exciting.
Lean Into Lent, and it's what's cool about this is it's got your name on it. Isn't that like, wow,
Yeah.
So how did you hook up with Joe Lee? Welcome, Joe.
Hi, Mary. Monica and I have known each other about 25 years, something like that. But I think when you were not able to be on the air, right. Rebecca Turner interviewed us, and I told Rebecca then that I didn't have a faith-based division of Dogwood Press until Monica contacted me.
Wow, God thing.
Yep, she wrote and had a query about what became the book, Advent Reflections for This Day. And Dogwood Press is a mystery suspense publishing house. And this wasn't mystery suspense, but the query, in addition to being very well written, made great sense from a financial standpoint. I thought, this is a good idea. This really is. And after thinking about it for a couple of days, praying about it, what do? I got up and I thought, I am going to add to the company a faith-based division. I told my wife that, and she said, "You are?" And I said, "Yeah, so there." And that was the first book through Sunrise Press. And author Hal Kitchings and I, with Doggone It Hurts, the 30-day dog devotional that was a few weeks ago, and this is the third Sunrise Press title.
Well, congratulations. It's called Lean Into Lent, a new approach to old traditions. And everybody thinks, Lent, you have to give stuff up. I don't think I want to take part in that. But that's old thinking, isn't it? Very old thinking. I mean, if you want to give something up, that's your business. Yeah. Whatever you want to do. But you don't have to fulfill the purpose of Lent.
Well, in my book, helps us think of different things to give up, because we typically think of, well, I got to give up drinking, or I've got to give up candy, or I've got to give up dessert, or, and how about we give up gossip? How about we give up
good. Being selfish.
Yeah. So the book helps us kind of walk through those things that maybe we don't realize we do, that get in the way of our relationship with God and stop us from being, the disciples He's called us to be.
Yeah, that's hard, because you think, oh, if I'm going to be a disciple, I have to give up everything. You don't.
No, not at all.
No, you don't. You don't have to do that. Lent is not just for Catholics; it's for all Christians. All Christians, and we decide too that God is everybody's God. People who say, "Well," no, don't say "well." It's the same God. Our approaches to Him are different, maybe in the Catholic Church as opposed to the Episcopal, or they're pretty close together. But I don't know, Lutherans and all.
I think most denominations practice Lent, and they have Lent in their liturgy. It's the oldest liturgy in the Christian church, so it's before
Lent?
there were denominations.
Really?
Yeah, the church fathers, the early Christian writers from 325 A.D. spoke about the tradition of Lent, that taking those 40 days to prepare, and it was people who were, Christianity was new, so they had to clarify their intentions and purify their lives of anything that was not fitting Christian behavior. So they were becoming a new person. So they needed this time. And so I just think there's great value. I think we've moved far away from that.
To know. Did they use the terminology Lent?
No, that was some other writer, a pope or somebody called it Lent, but it was the process of preparing for the Easter celebration to become a Christian.
Interesting.
And we still do that. That's still the culmination of Lent, is the Holy Saturday when new people come into the faith. But those of us who are already practicing and already part of the faith, we still have something really valuable to gain from that time.
That reminds me, when new people come in, I won't say her name, but we have somebody at St. Paul's who I call her just the greatest Catholic in the world, because she's so thrilled when she became Catholic years ago. This is some years ago now, and I thought that was so cool. She's just thrilled. Mm-hmm. And, people say, yeah, I'm going to do that, but not this one. She's just, exuberant about it and continues to be. And so it could be the same if you're going to the Methodist church or whatever, but we happen to be Catholic in that. I was going to say, my mother grew up with Catholic father and a Lutheran mother, because my grandmother, who I never knew, was originally, and her family all from Germany, so they're all Lutherans. And by the way, there was a story years ago, and I haven't seen anything since, in the Catholic newspaper about Lutherans and Catholics getting together and maybe joining, maybe combining, I don't know, but their big problem is transubstantiation. They don't want to believe in that, which is the
very close. Their liturgy is very close.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, they would go, this was in a small town in northern Michigan up here on Lake Huron, and they would go to church together, on Sundays, and my mother would play piano or organ, whichever one they wanted, at either church, because she was able to do that. And, I thought that was really, really very nice.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But this is something that all Christians have in common.
Yes. And this is, all Christians can take part in this.
Absolutely.
Lean into Lent. You called it, so, Joe, did you learn new things about Lent that you never knew, or I don't know what your denomination is, but.
Yeah, I'm Catholic. I grew up Baptist. And yes, I did. Monica's a great teacher, as well as very devout, very active in her faith. And one of the things we talked about with the Advent book was that it is multi-denominational, and that's even more so with this book. And we were very encouraged when we had different small groups of a bunch of different faiths getting Advent reflections a little over a year ago. And we expect that with Lent beginning March 5th. We're probably about 30 days out from that.
Gosh.
And, we're expecting...
time.
Yep. We expect to see several faiths represented, from people getting 10 to 15 books for their small groups. And, again, it's not so much, I'm going to give up bacon, or I'm going to give up Diet Mountain Dew this time.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
that sounds personal. It sounds personal, Jeff.
Yeah. But it's, what can you do? How can you serve your fellow man better during Lent? Maybe come up with a service project or something. And it's not just giving up things. It's about adding to your life and adding to your faith.
Right, because it's meant to change your life so that you continue to do those things. Because typically what we call is, we observe Lent. So for 40 days, we're going to do what we promised we were going to do. And then at Easter, we go back to our regular routine. But Lent is meant to interrupt you. It's a good time to clarify, well, what am I doing on a day? Why am I doing these things? And what should I be doing? What would be richer for me to do that I can carry into my life?
And you don't have to stop on Easter Sunday. I mean,
Correct.
if you're giving up chocolate, you'd like, ooh, can't wait till Easter, start eating my chocolate, and then Lent's forgotten. But if you're doing it this way, this starts you into something.
Right. Well, the study helps you look at making that sacrifice or what you give up meaningful. So why do I give up chocolate? What am I going to replace it with? So that you can go back to eating chocolate, but you're also not going to be, you're going to be more cognizant of why you eat chocolate. And, are you trying to comfort something? Well, then you're going to be able to replace that with something that is meaningful. And, we can look and start to see each other's needs and what can I do to help my fellow Christian.
Well, when you were growing up and became married and children and all, how did you grow up and express Lent in those days before you came upon this whole new concept?
Oh, yeah, we had to give up sweets, and we went to church every Friday and did Stations of the Cross and didn't eat meat. But I grew up in Louisiana, and so I was looking forward to Lent because we got fried shrimp every Friday. That was not a sacrifice to me personally. Yeah. But interestingly enough, I have 4 children, and when they were growing up, I was always trying to find ways to make it more meaningful then. So I didn't know I was writing this book, but because I didn't want it to just be about, dang it, I got to give up. Because I remember my oldest, when he finally decided to give up video games, and a weekend he was like, I can't do it. And so then we had to start talking about why we're doing it. And so when the baby was about 4 years old, I got the brilliant idea that we were all going to sit around and tell each other what we should give up for Lent, because your best friend's going to be harder on you than you are on yourself. And so I encourage people, what's the one thing you say, I could never give that up? Well, let's ask God if that's what he wants you to give up. But that became our tradition, where we challenged each other to make each other, to give meaning to our sacrifice.
That was a nice way to do it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Pretty cool.
And hard.
So putting that in writing, how did you make that leap? Because that's a leap, you have to and make it logical and make it fall into line with, and it's got to go from one place to another.
Correct. And it takes you through. That? So
when you're a writer, that's hard.
Yeah. Well, I knew that we wanted to. The focus of it is the Sunday Gospels, and so and most denominations follow the same similar liturgy, because this is the liturgy A is the oldest one. So in the book is all the context for the Gospels, and then I write what I call modern day parables, and that's kind of my unique niche that I've discovered that the Lord gave me. And it takes the gospel message and puts it in a contemporary setting, so that we can understand how to take that ancient text and live it in our world today. So I started asking myself those challenging questions, because that really challenged me. Every Ash Wednesday we hear Matthew 6, and Jesus says, when you give alms, when you pray, and when you fast. And a couple years ago, that hit me differently. I was like, he's not saying if. He's saying when. Yeah. And so then I really started asking myself those challenging questions, like why and what will that mean, and what would be really hard, but what would be really what I think Jesus wants us to do.
Did you talk to a lot of people? Not just Joe, but because you obviously had to sell this to Joe. Well, maybe you didn't have to, because you knew that whatever she was going to say was going to be good and right and all that sort of thing. It's going to make a whole lot of sense. But did you talk to people, just random people, whether they're at church or strangers? Or?
Well, no, I have a small group that I'm part of, and then I talked to different people. Yeah, asking them what their traditions were and what would they find challenging, and kind of feeling them out. But it was a lot of prayer. That was the main thing. Was I spent a lot of time in prayer. And so I have these questions for reflection every week, and there's space to even write down your answers and your inspirations. And so even if you got a really busy schedule, you can find time to just take this little book, because this is the only thing you need. You don't need a notebook. You don't need a Bible. It's all in here for you.
Did you have to edit her much, Joe? Did you have to edit her down?
Yes, because he always asks me to cut words.
Yes,
I have a lot of words.
Verbose.
to some degree, but the structure of the book is just like it was when I received it. We did have to scale back. There are budgets and there are things we have to fit into a small space. But the big selling point to me in the beginning, and I think it's a terrific selling point to the general public, regardless of faith, the busyness of the season, and this is true for Advent too. There are folks who get started, I'm going to do this every day, and then 2 or 3 days later, there's an illness in the family, or there's business travel, or there's something, and you start bogging down and get behind. And this is done very well. It's all the spiritual nourishment you would expect in a full 40-day study, but it's broken into weeks where you get everything in a much shorter period of time.
Well, that's really cool. Music is going to come up. We're going to have to take a break because I would like to do one more segment with you both. It's Monica Walton, who's an author. Ta-da! I'm so proud of you for that. I just think that's wonderful.
Thank you.
And then Joe Lee, who is the editor, owner, publisher. He's everybody at Dogwood Press, right? And you'll have to explain how you started Dogwood Press, because I don't think I ever asked you, and if I did, I don't remember. And the audience would want to remember and know that too, because is it just, by the way, for Mississippians, or can anybody submit proposals to you? Anybody? You know, 'cause some of the things that we do things with some businesses, which is fine, where it's strictly for Mississippians to do, and we like that. I would imagine that are most of your authors from Mississippi?
Most, yeah, and it's a big selling point. There are so many people in this state who love reading Mississippi authors. We have the tremendous Mississippi literary heritage with so many greats like Hemingway and Welty and Faulkner and Larry Brown and a lot of present-day authors. So there's great deal of interest year-round in Mississippi authors.
We'll come back in just a couple of minutes. Mary, Wieden, and you, glad to have you along with us today with Joe Lee and Monica Walton. Monica's book is Lean into Lent, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Stay where you are, please. Get ready for Lent, folks, and don't think old thinking. Glad to have you back. I've got Joe Lee, the editor and owner of Dogwood Press, and a division called Sunrise, and then the author, Monica Walton. I'm so proud of her because I know her, and we go to the same church, and this is her second book. I mean, that's just, I envy people who write books, and this is a beautiful thing. Leaning into Lent, it's not about giving stuff up. It's more like giving yourself what you can do. And you described it before when we were in the green room about it's the journey with Jesus is what it is. Explain that.
Absolutely.
Explain what that means.
Yeah, so as Christians, we have to own our part in Jesus' passion. And so this is the time when it's difficult to read the passion of Christ. And yes. But we need to own our part in it because he did it for us. And so it hurts. It hurt him. So it's painful for us too, because we got to look at ourselves and look at the things that we need to do better, because we think of, he did this for me, and what am I doing for him?
When I went to see the movie The Passion of the Christ years ago, and if you've never seen that, folks, you should see it. You will probably cry from beginning to end, but that's okay. That's okay. This young woman at the theater where I went with my friend, we were buying popcorn ahead of time, and she said, he did it for me. That it was exactly what you said, and this was years ago when that movie came out. She said that very thing. He did that for me. She said, it's hard to believe.
And the good news is we walk with him, and we become closer to him, we become more like him, and then we get to celebrate the glory of his resurrection.
That's the part. And did you have to edit a lot of Monica, Joe? Joe Lee is here. He's the editor and publisher. Did you have to edit a lot of Monica? Or
no.
Did she?
No. Writes well, and we work together well. And I think I said earlier, budgets for how much content, that's determined in advance, and I worked with her a little bit on that. But no, she's a pro. She comes in with a good structure and good ideas, and that's wonderful. I can't invent on the fly, especially when there's going to be something time sensitive like this. This book, with Lent beginning here on March 5th, we needed to be doing what we're doing right this minute, promoting it here at the beginning of February. We couldn't. I wouldn't have been able to publish this if she'd shown up in November and said, I have this part of a good idea for Lent, and I'll have it ready in a few months.
Ooh. Yeah. When did you submit the final? Your final? And when did y'all decide all this? It takes a while.
Months ago.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember. Was it April? maybe.
Takes less than a year.
It was right around Easter last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
She was already talking about that and working on it. And, I'm sure I said something along the lines of, let's see how well your first book sells.
How well did it sell? The Advent book, how did it sell? Did it do well?
Yes.
Obviously it did well.
We made a nice splash with that book. We sold copies of the Advent book, Mary, in states as far away as Illinois and Texas.
Wonderful.
And,
congratulations.
There are a lot of churches, a lot of Catholic parishes, and a lot of Protestant churches bought both for congregations and for small groups.
Oh, that's nice.
And we have seen that same thing here with Lean Into Lent.
And by the way, folks can find Monica's work at a number of places, starting with Lemuria and go on to some other ones. Where can we find her books?
Lorelei Books in Vicksburg. Bay Life Gifts in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. That's a wonderful little gift shop, and copies of both her books are there. Also, the Book Mart and Cafe in Starkville, and Impression Books out in Flowood. And everybody has signed copies.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, what a thrill. I just think that's a huge thrill for you. So you must be working on another book.
Always. I've got a lot happening up here.
But these are the two biggies that people celebrate, I think, aren't they, in churches, Advent and Lent.
The inspiration just came for these, so I just got to go where the Lord leads me. So,
what are you thinking? Where is he leading? What do you hear from him?
It's more of a...
you listen, wait. You wait and listen for him.
Yeah. The beginnings of one that Joe may or may not. I haven't pitched it to him yet because it's not ready. But but there's yearnings of a book about fear, and for just all year, not something that's time sensitive like this.
That's an interesting concept. Fear. I mean, it could be anything. Anything. Anybody can have it.
Yeah.
About
and the
anything.
Bible Jesus has said more than 365 times, do not be afraid, and talked about fear. So he obviously wants us to get that message.
Wow. Yes.
And we still live in a lot of fear.
How many times, how many times he said that? How you physically
There's
have gone
literally,
through
I
literally
searched to see if that was true, because I had heard that there were 365 references. And I was like, well, he gave us something for every day of our lives.
Wow.
So
that'll be a good one. Well, when you get through Lent, it's, if you've ever seen the movie The Passion of the Christ, folks, you all ought to see it. I think I've said that before. It's a very tough, and so when you get toward the end of Lent, when you get to Good Friday, how do you deal with that? Is it going to make you cry?
Well, we've worked hard.
Right.
And so we're gonna at Good Friday we face what we've done, and then we look back and see that we're giving ourselves, and that's why the book sets it up to where we reflect on that, so that we want to continue to give that after Easter.
But the hard part is, I think the hard part starts Palm Sunday. I mean, that's the one that, when you get to Palm Sunday, you're getting into Holy Week, and that's so hard. That's, it just tears you apart.
And you stop and reflect on the scripture. They were celebrating him on Palm Sunday, and welcoming him and throwing palms in the air like he was. Yeah. And then shortly after, they're plotting to kill him.
Yes.
And
we go through that.
Yes.
And does this help us get through that? I mean, because we know what we're supposed to do. What do we do? How do we get through Good Friday? I think that's the toughest day of the year. It's so sad. It's so cruel and so hard.
And we have to get through it with thankfulness in our hearts, because he did that for us, and he did that so that we don't suffer. We are sometimes more brutal on ourselves, not accepting other people's help when we need it, and not giving the help that we know others need because we turn a blind eye.
Wow.
Or we wait for someone else to do it.
Wow. How did you come to these conclusions? That's
I spent
fascinating.
hours in prayer, and just a deep dive into, like I said, the early Christian writers, a deep dive into, those were the people who were the closest. Some of them were witnesses, and so they're using the writings from people who literally lived with Jesus and walked with Jesus. And so I wanted to get that spirit into it, and then just looking at Scripture and digging into Scripture, and literally sitting, reading a Scripture passage, sitting in the quiet and waiting for him to tell me. Because my question, and this is how I come with the stories and everything, is I pray over Scripture, and then I ask him, God, what do you want to say to us in this message today? How do we live this today? I ask that every time I read any kind of scripture.
Did you talk to priests or a priest about any of this too? How they approach it and how they can help you come to the conclusions that you come to and to write this?
No, not necessarily that, because then it becomes their work. But I did consult with a couple of priests for accuracy to make sure I was, that this made sense, that I was expressing it correctly.
Oh yeah, well that's
because I'm not a theologian.
right. Oh goodness. Well, it's fascinating that the early Christians. I'm just always marvel at them when you read what did they think about Jesus? And they finally came to the conclusion. Well, yeah, he is. That says what he is. But so hard for those people in those days. They didn't have any historical perspective. They didn't have any background. Well, the Old Testament is full of these things that were going to happen. But still, they had to deal with this. Well, what do we do now? Or what do we think about this? Do you guys ever think about that? I thought about that during Bible studies, and they miraculously did everything. They came through it somehow, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. One thing, Mary, that Monica does very, very well, and what we're talking about right now is applicable to this comment. What I was not going to be able to use and publish would be a well-written and well-intentioned but very, very scholarly work that just didn't read as smoothly. And she has a very prolific writing background, so the writing I knew would need to be conversational as well as fill in all the good stuff, all the spiritual nourishment that's in the book. It's very well done. It includes scripture and readings, and the modern day parables are especially well written. They're conversational. They're like little fiction pieces which are well done and fit right into the scope of the entire book. So that's a big selling point for this for both the Catholic and the Protestant. It's easy to read. It's a challenging read. It's not always a fun read, but it's easy to read, and the ease of reading will help you a lot more than reading a textbook.
And Monica, we have prayers at the church that they'll say, "Oh, here, somebody wrote this prayer." I think you're the prayer writer, aren't you? You write a lot of prayers, don't you?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is great. You can think of a prayer. Just you can say a prayer too, can't you?
Yes, I do. Pray freely. My small group is every time we get together, I'm like, "Who wants to pray?" And they're like, "You."
You do it. You do it.
Yeah. But that's just practice and opening myself up and being vulnerable with that, and just letting the Holy Spirit tell me what.
Is that fairly new, like in the last 10 years or so?
A little longer than that. But yes, I was not raised in that tradition. I was raised with rote prayers. I literally grew up across the street from the Catholic Church. So,
well, and in Louisiana.
Yeah, in Louisiana. So it was ingrained in our life, though, which was a blessing for me. Sure. And so it's been it's still been. I've always just been a person of faith, and so. But I did talk to other people of other denominations about the Advent book and about this book, and they said, for Advent particularly, I've had a woman in Louisiana who's Baptist, and she said, I didn't know anything about Advent, but I loved the book, and now I understand my Catholic friends better. And we have so much in common. And so it's helping with, ecumenical efforts too, because it is the same Jesus, and we're all his disciples. That's
the thing that that drives me nuts about denominational things, because it's like, why bog yourself down with minuscule? Look at the big picture. This is God, this is Jesus, the Holy Trinity. Everybody believes that. So don't be silly.
And what faith tradition is gonna bring me closer to Him?
And don't be judgmental in a negative way about other churches. That's
in the book.
Oh, good to know. No, really, that's very good to know. I used to, be really upset. I didn't understand. In my family, there's Catholics, Lutherans. One of my great-grandfathers was a congregational minister. I think he studied at Yale Divinity. I didn't know him. But and then there's some Presbyterians and all this stuff. And I would think, well, gosh, are they all going to make it up there, or are they going to go to hell because they're not Catholic? And it's not that way at all. It's different now.
Yeah.
Things are different. Hey, well, all right, listen, I'm going to thank you both. Lean into Lent, A New Approach to Old Tradition by Monica Walton. Walton. You can find it everywhere, starting with Lemuria and online.
That's right.
Dogwood Press.
Dogwoodpress.com. Thank you, Mary.
Well, thank you both. And good luck.
It's been fun. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Be back in just a few minutes. I was talking to Monica. We were having a conversation about some people we know. But anyway, so we got our final segment here. What's it we're doing Friday? I got something for Friday. I can't even remember what it is. But anyway, working on some other things. Let's see. Well, the big deal that I think of locally, is the trial in Madison County. And I told you about that one, the fuss over who gets the land between Gluckstadt and Madison, if they get it. The rest of the stuff is, I was watching over the weekend the plane crash situation. And I thought about some things about the one in Philadelphia. I don't know. We'll find out in the investigation of it. But when I was doing the helicopter one time, we were up toward Madison. And I was on the phone with the Madison Police Department about a possible accident. And when I finished, I said, "Well, we need to go there." And the crew said, the pilot and the photographer said, "No, we have to go. There's a plane crash." I said, "Well, I thought they were joking." I said, "No, we got to go here." And they said, "Mary, there's been a plane crash." What? Sure enough, there was a plane crash, and we were up by, not very far from 43. Well, this happened right south of Hawkins in Jackson. And of course, when we turned the helicopter around, you could see the smoke and everything. I said, "Oh my Lord, what happened?" Well, so the thing of it is, what happened was there were these three, I think, elderly gentlemen who were going to go from Hawkins to maybe the Raymond Airport for something, and right when they lifted off, I think they Maydayed. I'm trying to remember this in detail, but I think they called it. They were having trouble, and they were going to try to turn around, and they couldn't. And for some reason, something happened to the plane, and they knew somehow that they were going to die in that plane. And instead of bringing that plane down like parallel to the earth, they decided it would be better if they went into one house instead of a whole row of houses and, destroying a neighborhood and killing a lot of people. So they deliberately made a decision to point the nose down, and that's what they did. I mean, gosh, 3 souls lost, and I had to do reports on that. It was really something. So the plane in Philadelphia, it seems like that sort of, it was a similar situation. Like, they were, I don't know what all, but they were lifting up, but something happened, and they went down. It seemed like that it went nose down. Lance, did you see the video? I mean, you could see the explosion, but it seemed like it was a thing like that where they knew that they weren't going to make it, and they were going to try to eliminate as much damage to the people on the ground as they could. I don't know. Maybe I'm just living in a different alternate reality here. But
and being in that situation, it's not anything anybody ever wants to envision, even trying to put yourself in their shoes as they're going through that. I mean, what a tragic and horrific end, knowing that you're going down. But then you have a pilot there going, okay, I've got to save as many people as I can.
Imagine reporting on that, too.
Running into another car or building. So, they know they're about to go out. And yet they still have the wherewithal to. Well,
that was what with the three gentlemen that I thought of. It was they were.
I think the same. Yeah, from what it looks like, somebody tried really hard, knowing their life was coming to an end, to at least save as many.
Exactly. Yeah.
That were potentially in the.
Somehow they knew. Somehow that was known, and I remember reporting that. Somehow that was known. Gosh, can you imagine that? So that was a terrible situation. And the other thing, I watched Saturday night. There was a lengthy news conference with the NTSB and this one man who was a board member. I don't know his name or anything like that, but quite frankly kept saying, that the helicopter. Now this is the other one. The helicopter in D.C. The helicopter was at altitude of 200. And this has been, I've heard other people say this too since then. The altitude was 200. We initially heard it was like 300. But anyway, it was at 200 feet. And that the plane was at 325 plus or minus 25 feet. So it could have been 350 feet altitude or 300 altitude. So there's 100 feet in between. So, and I'm no investigator or anything, but it's a mysterious thing. I wonder if the wing of the plane hit one of the rotors. If that happens in a helicopter, you're gone. It's like the helicopter accident with Kobe Bryant. He was going to his pilot was going to a V-shaped situation on Earth. The Earth, whatever it was, not a valley, whatever it was like this. And he thought he was going up. The pilot pilot did, and he was actually going down. And if a rotor hit something, a tree or whatever, you're gone. And so I just wonder if that could have happened with this thing. Who knows?
One thing after looking at that flight plan of the helicopter, and that there were at least 4 other planes that it encountered in its route down the Potomac as the planes were coming into the landing zone, going north to northwest. As the helicopter turned the corner south of the airport, it did some interesting maneuvers all the way down. And I watched a video the other day of the Lockheed Martin's Matrix system, where they can fly only the Black Hawk remotely. Now, you can have people in it sitting there and doing everything, but you can fly that helicopter with a remote control. It's the only one I'm aware on the armament that the Black Hawk. Yeah. Now, the Lockheed Martin Matrix system is what does that. Now, I'm not trying to say there's a conspiracy. What I am saying is it seems that there were 3 people on that helicopter. Whether they were actually flying that chopper or not, I'm not sure. But I can say that helicopter can be controlled remotely. There's quite a few videos of that, very in-depth. And it has been used that way. So from the maneuvering it looked like they were doing certain maneuvers down the Potomac that were like tests.
Yep,
okay, go over here, turn, do that. So I don't know. Maybe more will come out, but the point of it being too high or too low and all that's obviously something being debated now. So, but there's just a lot of unknowns.
Oh, absolutely. In the first video, I remember seeing you could see the light from the helicopter, and I'm looking at the TV screen. Well, I'd be looking at, and I saw this plane come up, and they were talking about that plane. I thought, wow, that plane's way out of the way. There's nothing there. But then what you don't see, then all of a sudden you look, and way over here is this tiny little bit of light. And when they finally put a bubble on it, you could see it. Little tiny thing, and then poof. Well, that was the plane coming in. That was the jet coming in. And by the way, Black Hawk is a make, is it not, or is it a style? Because I heard Sikorsky from time to time, and
I believe the Sikorsky is the helicopter, but Black Hawk is the retrofitted style of they take that and turn it into a military style helicopter rather than a transport or what. I believe when they outfit it, maybe that's when it turns into the Black Hawk version.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, because Sikorsky's a really good, that's the Kobe Bryant one, by the way. That was one, I happened to look it up from the FAA. Because I've done this kind of stuff, and though I didn't have anything like that. But I have an interest in helicopter things. And so when his thing happened, I wondered what make was it. It was Sikorsky, and I looked on the FAA page, and it has a listing of, from the worst of the, down to the best of safety and all that kind of stuff. And Sikorsky was number 18. I thought, well, that's good. Well, the number 1, this is the freaky part, the number 1 helicopter for the most accidents and fatalities was, guess what? Robinson R-44, which was the Skycopter, for heaven's sakes, and it was also Metro One. They had 2 of them out there at the time. Yeah. Oh, if I would have known that, I don't think I would have stayed very long in that. Although I will say, we had very good maintenance crew. And I think I did tell the story about this one guy. He seemed so young. How did he know all that stuff? And I said, where'd you learn all this stuff? And he said, Hines. Learned it at Hines. Hines Community College has a very good aviation department, and you learn everything you need to know. Planes are basically the same, the basic parts, but then you have to learn the helicopter part, and
that's some responsibility.
That's a very big deal.
I always think of that.
Any little thing on a helicopter.
Yeah, Gerard, he's a flyer, and I've known plenty of them that are on the private side, and maintenance is so important.
Oh, absolutely.
But being in charge of that, goodness gracious, that would be a stressful job. You better be good at it, and that speaks volumes to what Hines is doing, putting out people that have that kind of qualification, because that's a dangerous job, flying, and you really depend on those people on the ground to take care of your business for you.
You do, and helicopter it's really true. I read it in a book, and I had it validated by our chief pilot. The helicopter is the only machine that tries to tear itself apart when you start it up, and just because you want it to do different things, and just going like this, it's rocking and shaking, but that's the way it goes. I remember one time we started off, and it was shaking badly, and I thought, just don't be the girl, just keep still. The 3 of us, the pilot, me, and the photographer, anybody could call a flight and say, no, we're taking this. And I thought, I'll just be quiet for a little bit, and because I'm sure the pilot is very well aware of this, which he was. He said, okay, we're going down, and so we did. And so they had to tear that helicopter apart to find out why in the world it was shaking, and what it was. You know what it was? It was a filter. But who would know? I mean, unless you have to tear it apart. And they knew all that stuff. And by the way, Robinson was very good about training the pilots on their equipment. You had to learn the various things of that particular helicopter. So anyway, but yeah, I've been watching this stuff, and it's horrible. It's really horrible. I know a pilot who's a stunt pilot, used to fly for a major airline and has a stunt company. And can you imagine? What if you're up flying your regular route and you happen to think about stunt flying? Well, I don't think that wouldn't be a good idea. But anyway, and that's a scary thing too, because they do lots of things. There's a lot of maintenance that goes on with those planes as well. I mean, there's a whole lot that goes on there, especially if you're going to try to fly it upside down. Especially if you're going to try to, what a hammerhead stall is. You know what that is? You don't know what a hammerhead stall is?
No.
Okay, here's what it is. When you take look at this. You take a plane, you go right straight up, and you stall. You stall, and then you start it up. Well, you don't. Then you want to bring it. Then you have control of it, but for a little bit you don't. That's the scary part. Ooh. Anyway, on that cheerful note, take care, everybody. Stay cool this week, right? Because it's hotter than you know what out there. Thanks, everybody. See ya Friday.